I'm Maria Schwartz, and welcome to the Winsidr Show, where it's all about the W. The last week in the WNBA has included core designation, negotiation period, free agency signing, and the draft. And that's just a week removed from the expansion draft. To say the W is in a new era is an understatement. I'm joined this episode with Melissa Triebwasser, part of the Winsidr team. Very excited to get into this one, so we'll dive right in. Before we get into today's show, just a quick reminder, Winsidr is a fully independent WNBA news site, and everything we do is supported by listeners like you. If you enjoy what we're doing here, you can keep it going by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/Winsidr. It's patreon.com/Winsidr. With pricing levels for everyone, you directly support the work we do putting into the covering the W year round. We've also got a full team producing great written coverage over at winsidr.com, plus more content than ever across TikTok, Instagram, Blue Sky, Twitter, and YouTube. And if you're in the market for WNBA gear, check out the affiliate links in the show notes and on winsidr.com. That's winsidr.com. You get to rep the league, and Winsidr gets a little support along the way. Welcome back to the show. Excited to be here. Melissa, excited to be chatting with you. How are you doing in this crazy, crazy time?
Yeah, I mean, I cover some college basketball too. So between the transfer portal opening and the WNBA draft and free agency all happening in approximately a 36-hour period, it's been a wild couple of weeks, but we're doing great. There's so much to look forward to. Training camp starts this weekend, right? So the fun never stops when you're interested and passionate about women's basketball.
That is more true today than ever before, especially with our ability now to follow more closely overseas basketball. Hint, hint, you should be paying attention to overseas basketball for the draft and for free agency and just the new era of the W with 15 teams, more roster spots. Before we get into anything, I have to say one thing. I didn't prep you on this. I got to show some love to my bestie, Rachel Galligan.
Yes.
If you follow the show for a while, Rachel and I have been hosting this show for over 8 years at this point. Rachel, very excited to be the first full-time international scout for the Minnesota Lynx. Very excited and happy for her. Obviously, maybe this clues some listeners in as to why she hasn't been on the show for the past few months or at all in 2026 and a few months before that. Obviously, when you're working for a team, you're not podcasting about what that team is doing and what other teams are doing, but super, super excited. I'm just going to gas her up for a moment. She played college basketball. She's in a multiple Hall of Fames. She coached college basketball. She played overseas. She ran scouting firms, or I don't even know if that's the proper term. Basically, she has worked to get overseas players to college basketball in America. She has worked, as everyone knows, covering the W for many years. This is a person who bleeds women's basketball, and I am just so excited and happy for her. And I'm sure she is going to send me a very angry text for saying all of this. But she'll always be Hoff to me. So, okay, let's dive into it.
Wait, I got it. You left out one of Rachel's incredible accomplishments.
Well, I figured you might add this.
She covers the Big 12 as well and has been a great advocate for Big 12 women's basketball. We've been, mutuals on social for a while, finally got to connect with her in person at the Big 12 tournament and saw the news right before we hopped on. So couldn't be more excited for her other than the fact that it's a big loss for the Big 12. Because she, like I said, just did such a great job advocating for a very underappreciated conference, in my opinion, when it comes to women's basketball.
Very true, very true. I figured you'd drop that one in there. You know me, college basketball is always, the back of my mind. Okay, so what else are we going to talk about? The draft just happened a few days ago as we record. Free agency happened literally the day before the draft as we're about to record or whatever. It has been insane. I was saying this beforehand. It's just hard to even, get my head around this is what this team looks like. And I understand there's some teams that didn't have such crazy changes. Like we're talking about the Las Vegas Aces. They're basically running it back. You're talking about New York, essentially a very similar team with a slight variation difference in which Sabali's sister is on the roster. Was this a long play by the New York Liberty to get Satu eventually? Who knows? We'll never know unless, someone writes a tell-all book later. But let's dive into it. The draft is most recent, so we'll go draft first. We have not prepped on this at all, so I'm excited to just have an honest conversation with you. Like, if you were to pick maybe two teams to be your winners of the draft, who would you say that was?
Well, I mean, I think you have to just look at Dallas. Like it's an obvious pick. And you're going to hear me reference again when we talk about free agency, just the success that they have. And I mean, this was a year, unlike the last two, where there wasn't necessarily an obvious number one. And I think leading into free agency, there was a lot of thought that the Wings could go with Alwa Pham. Olivia Miles started to gain some momentum towards what would have been her pseudo home team late in the process. But when you look at the moves that they made in free agency, they left a very glaring hole that just happened to be filled by the person they picked number one overall. And so getting AZ Fudd, targeting her, as Kurt Miller and Jose Fernandez talked about after the draft, targeting her early as the person that they wanted to pick enabled them to make the free agency moves that they made, knowing what they had kind of in the can. And, you know, they lost a couple of really great pieces in Haley Jones and Luisa Geisa Soto to the expansion draft in Portland. So they filled those needs. And then they brought in a knockdown 3-point shooter and a good defensive wing with some size in AZ Fudd. So I don't know that I loved the pick of Z Spearman. I don't know that it's a bad pick. I don't know that it matters because they brought in so much forward depth, but with more traditional stretch fours like Maggie Dugan, who I have the most big basketball crush on in the world, still out there and available, and Mia Castro and some of those more traditional stretch four types that they lost in Luisa. I think I would have liked to have seen them go with one of those mid-major players. But at the end of the day, I still absolutely love what they did. And, you know, my second team, and this is going to come just with incredible bias at hand, is the Minnesota Lynx. They had a tough free agency. They saw some of their best players leave to those same Dallas Wings. But when you talk about a player who is not only a generational talent at what she does best in Olivia Miles, in her court vision, but just bringing some excitement and some flash and flair to a team that felt like it was just taking punch after punch after punch in free agency, and knowing it might be a while before we see Nafisa Collier back on the court. I think Miles is just a perfect fit. I think her vibe and her personality and the things that are important to her really fit with that franchise. I think Cheryl Reeve is going to be a perfect person. And I loved their pick of Lanny White at the very end of the draft too, who is just another really underrated college player that I think just is going to help them rebuild on the fly. I think we went into this process post free agency. The Lynx look like a team that were on a path of rebuild. But I think that they can kind of patchwork this thing till Fee comes back and still be really, really competitive, and get back to championship form sooner than later because of the really judicious moves that they made along the way.
I'll get to Minnesota in a little bit. Dallas, I like the move, and you're completely right. I gotta agree with that. For me, it's always hard for me to like take the team that has the number one pick as a winner,
Sure.
because it's like if you didn't get what you need, like you are you are a loser. I'm sorry, because like you have it in
You have
and
all
but
the options.
that is the I can like I will stand here very strong that I'm our truther or whatever the term is. I'm not using that right. I think she should have been number one pick.
Mhm.
I think that level of just possibility, youth, length, size, whatever, like we could be looking at the next Lauren Jackson, the next Brianna Stewart, the next whoever you want to write, Cheryl Swoops, you could even say. And so that, but like everything Dallas did this whole offseason set them up for, if they would have taken Awa, it would have not fit the roster at all. And I completely agree with you. And I like that. If you're going to commit to what your first pick is, figure that out early enough that you can do all of the free agency moves to set that pick up for the type of success that you truly want. And I do think this is a very exciting team. It's going to be interesting to see with this new head coach what's going to be happening. My team, Seattle.
Mm.
Well, obviously, you can figure out why. You get Fam at 3 or Fam at 3. You're a flat out winner in my book. Look, you have Awa, Dom, Ezzy. Heck, you could play all of them at once. That would be like the craziest
Yeah,
tall
right.
lineup of all time. No one's getting a
Athleticism.
rebound. No one's getting an easy shot up. No one's getting a layup. But maybe, heck, maybe in the near future, Ezzy gets moved. Okay, you still have the scariest front court for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
And then you get Flage. And you look at this roster, and there's spots to be taken. So, like, the depth spots of Mayer and Van Sluten, like, you better come ready because you can make this. Like, this is not in years past where you're not making the roster. We were talking about this before. you're having, as far as my understanding, I know the CBA hasn't like officially been signed, um, but you have to have 12. And on top of that, you have those two developmental spots, which I cannot praise enough. So very excited for that Seattle roster. And then DC, I like the variety of what they got. I think that they got a lot of well-known names that you're like, oh, they're still there. Snatch them up, take them in, like see what you have. This is a team with a lot of youth on it, a lot of minutes to be spared around. And then we have to give some love to UCLA, right? Because
Yeah,
I
Lord.
mean, how many did they end up with in the end? Was it
Six in the first 16 picks, right? Something like that, or first 18 picks. Yeah. I'm glad you brought up Washington because they were high on my list with two of those UCLA players. I thought Duke went a little bit earlier, but I think again, like, do you have to draft for the best available player when you already have arguably the most exciting young core in the league? No, go with the player that fits what you want. And also drafting some of these older players, you're bringing some maturity. I was ecstatic to see Rory Harmon picked, but I'm wondering if Washington is going for a record for like shortest point guard combined height in the league. But again, like when you look at Georgia Moore coming back off that injury, Rory Harmon is as steady as they come, as veteran as they come. And so if you're not sure what you're going to get from Moore and what will essentially be her rookie season, I think bringing in such a steady veteran was a great move. And to have 6 picks and really, I think hit on, I would be shocked if 5 of these players are not, on a roster on opening day. They may have to move because they have kind of an embarrassment of riches. And when it comes to young talent, but yeah, I thought Washington absolutely nailed. And Lauren Betts at 4. Like I was a little bit of a Lauren Betts hater at the beginning of the year, and she suffered from having been so good for so long that we were starting to overanalyze her, I think. But when you look at what she did in the tournament and just how completely dominant she was, you have to think she is a player that will find success in the W. And when you look at the pieces around her, I mean, you talk about exciting front court. She's not going to have the raw athleticism and speed and jumping ability of Seattle, but on the opposite coast, you're going to be dealing with Kiki and Lauren Betts. Like that is just that's not any fun either. And Sonia Citron's one of my absolute favorite players in the league. And you've got, I mean, Dariana Littlepage Bugs coming in, to play alongside her. There's just a lot of talent on that roster. A lot of it's really, really young, but this is a team that you talk about teams that are going to be good in 5 and 10 years. Seattle and Washington are certainly setting them up to be dominant franchises in the very near future.
all right? Draft losers. I'll go first. And I'll be real about this. Again, I struggle. Normally, like the losers is where I succeed. That is my zone. I struggled with it this year. I'm going to go with Golden State just because of the whole Flage thing and how it was handled, the rollout of it. Not the announcement of the trade, but when questions were asked about it, when you don't handle that, I'm still a little bit confused by it. It seems like it was the first fumble of this franchise that have done so much right. And I know some people are going to talk about some roster moves last season, fine, fair. But I feel like this was the first time when we're not talking about, that lower level, like coach and players, when we're talking about GM, front office, and above, this was the first time that we saw a little bit of a fumble. So yeah, and so I mean, I will throw a little shade just because for my honorable mention to Minnesota and Dallas for not taking Fam. But whatever. I understand it, but because of my complete bias of who I would have picked, I will throw a little shade. Sorry.
Well, and I do, as somebody who I'm an alumni of, and the college team that I cover is TCU. I hope that the Golden State fans give Marta Suarez a chance before they completely get upset about the trade. And as much as I loved the idea of Flage in the Bay, like that did seem like a perfect fit. When you look at the roster construction, like you mentioned, what Marta does and what she does so well, I think fits on that team. The international flair that they have and the way that they play, she's going to just culturally on and off the court fits so well with that team. I think that the real loss comes in how it was handled. And it sounds like what they were trying to say is we agreed to this trade before the picks were made. We had no idea that Flage was going to fall to us, but we had already kind of had this handshake agreement. I think it'll look back and it will seem like both of those players ended up where they belong and can have success where they are. But I totally understand the consternation that people feel. And again, you talk about bias. Like, there's not a player in this league I'm going to be more biased towards than Marta Suarez because of just what an incredible human being she is. I will be rooting so hard for her. And her single season at TCU, she made just a giant impact on me. Just for who she is. And so I really hope that she thrives in Golden State. It makes people forget what a controversial trade that was. I think I am going to go two losers, but I'm going to go in a different direction. Number one is going to be mid-major players, and especially those mid-major players that stayed loyal to mid-major programs for 4 years. Not seeing Maggie Dugan drafted, not seeing Brooklyn Meyer drafted, not seeing Mia Nicastro drafted. I thought was I don't know if travesty is over exaggerating it, but to me, it's a little bit tragic in this era because when you have these players that have played and developed for 4 years or 5 years at the mid-major level who didn't jump ship for brighter pastures or bigger paychecks, to see them do it the quote unquote right way. And I'm a big proponent of transfer portal and NIL, but when you have those players that stick to it, you want to see them rewarded for the work that they put in. And I'm super excited that some of those players got invites to camps, but it does kind of show you where the new system is headed. And I can't remember the exact numbers, but the percentages of players that were Power 4 or international, it was like 90% of the players drafted combined. And I think that is unfortunate for the game because as much as I do appreciate player movement, and I do follow the biggest transfer portal school on the planet, it still is you want to see those kids that stick it through when it's a little bit tougher be rewarded and get opportunities if nothing else. So I'll be rooting for them in camps. And then the other thing, when you kind of again talk about doing things the right way, Tania Lotson made a move from being the person, the number one option on a middle of the pack Florida State team to going to try to win a championship with South Carolina, and her stats took a hit. And apparently so did her draft stock. And so seeing her kind of free fall a little bit was disappointing. Again, it's not about where you get drafted. It's about where you fit. And I think she ended up in a really, really good situation for her. So I think that will end up being fine. But again, it's just one of those things where on draft night, you're seeing some of these mocks have her in the top 7, the top 8 picks, and she falls towards late in the second round. And that just seems a little bit unfortunate, but I think at the end of the day, it's going to work out. And I think she'll have a great career with the Sparks.
And that's the thing about this season is like there's so many more roster spots this year.
Yeah.
There is such more opportunity. And what we're seeing, at least so far, is, for so many years, we've had fewer roster spots and heartbreaking cuts late into camp.
Yeah.
And for the most part, yeah, we've seen a few of those players get opportunities this year. But what we're seeing more of is international players coming over and then draft spots. So we just haven't seen as many of those, roster bubble players in like coming back to the league this year, which is going to be interesting as the seasons go on. We did see, news broke today, Kennedy Carter going to the Vegas Aces. That will be extremely interesting. And we'll talk about that now because we're talking about free agency, winners and losers of free agency. I'll go first with my winners. I got to go New York to get all the key starters back. They had Rebecca Allen, Hans back, Marine Johannes, Rebecca Gardner, Carrera, Astaire, and they had the better of the Sabalis. I'm not trying to throw shade there. I'm just trying to say, we're talking about one who is an MVP caliber player. And now they have her on their roster. So that is a ridiculous upgrade. So I have to include New York as one of my winners. Now you give me one of your winners.
Oh, I mean, to me, hands down, the biggest winner of the last week has been the Atlanta Dream. When you add Angel Reese to your roster, especially in a city like Atlanta that loves a star and is going to be so supportive of Angel, she continues to develop and kind of reach her incredible talent capacity. Atlanta just is a perfect fit. And not only did they do that, but they bring back Alicia Gray, they bring back Ryan Howard, they bring back Brianna Jones, Jordan Canada, and Naz Hillman. And so all of a sudden you have this core that's ready to win now while still having added one of the most exciting and marketable young players in the league. And a big winner as well is Angel Reese, who gets out of a very, we'll call it difficult situation in Chicago, and in a place where I think she can absolutely thrive. When you look at the coaching and the ownership and the system that they're running, there's just a lot of opportunity for her to continue to not just have success on the court, but to continue to become a global icon and brand when it comes to fashion and basketball and everything in between. So Atlanta just absolutely nailed it, in my opinion. And I think that's going to be one of the most fun teams to watch this year.
Yeah, and I think the interesting, at least for me, like my thing with Angel Reese is, as someone who's a huge fan of her college game, in the pros, when you surround someone with the insane magical rebounding gift that she has, and I don't want that to take away from the hard work she puts into it, but I have never seen, it's like there's a magnet in the ball and a magnet in her hand. It is the most absurd thing I've ever seen. She'll be like nowhere near the ball, and somehow, some way, the ball floats to her. She gets, I don't know, the ball doesn't float to her, she gets to it. And to be surrounded with that talent of shooting on that
Yeah.
roster is going to be insane for offensive rebounds and putbacks. I had Vegas obviously bring him back. You had Kennedy Carter, that'll be interesting. Adding Bree Turner, Steph Talbot, but the team that I'm like hilariously, and obviously some love to Dallas, but the team that like I am just dying and I have to include them as a winner of free agency is Chicago, because well, there's definitely been some moves that I question and am banging my head like, what are you doing? You add Azare, or bring back Azare, you bring back Sloot, Dejanay Carrington, Rakia Jackson, Skylar. Yeah, you way overpay for JC Sheldon, but fine, okay. You did some bad moves, but I got to give you a winner for this, because somehow, some way, the butt of the jokes for the last how many years has been in the league has been the Chicago Sky. And they were able to build a roster that you can say is a win now roster. They were able to convince superstars, former champions, big names, top of their class, whatever you want to say, to come here and play for this roster, play for this franchise, who still barely does not have a facility. It still has a plethora of issues. It feels like every year there's another issue, coaching carousel, roster carousel, and so many questionable moves in the GM position. Fine, but you got some stuff, and like you're not in the depths of the league anymore. So I got to give some love to the Chicago Sky on that one. Who's your next team?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go with Dallas, and again, I'm in the DFW market. I'm certainly biased, but I think that universally, what Dallas has done in this offseason has been celebrated around the league, and we touched on it a little bit. We talked about drafting AZ Fudd and the moves that they made, but you talk about a team with no facility, the coaching turnover, roster turnover, right? Dallas has all of those same issues, and much like Chicago, it felt like they went into the offseason with a very distinct plan, and they executed that plan to a really high level. And I spent some time with Kurt and Jose this offseason and just kind of getting a vision of what they were. But the consternation around what was going to happen from this fan base was, I mean, my DMs and emails and everything has just been absolutely blowing up with how are they going to get people to come to Dallas and play. And at the end of the day, money talks. That's a huge thing, but you still have Paige Beckers, and Paige Beckers went to Unrivaled, and Enrique went to Unrivaled, and Lee went to Unrivaled, and Maddie went to Unrivaled, and they recruited the heck out of people. And I think that combination of young energy, of a really established coach who, though this will be his first run in the WNBA, he's been around a long time, and he knows a ton of these players from his time at USF, where he was for 25 years. Management, is Kurt Miller said on the post-draft press conference, they have poured millions of dollars into scouting and staffing positions and development positions. And so they are really understanding that they have Paige Beckers on a rookie contract, and they better A, give her a reason to want to stay past it, but B, they better win before she becomes an Asia Wilson super max player, right? And so you have Paige Beckers, who's such a magnet and such a social media darling. You have AZ Fudd, who's going to be a massive draw. You bring in, to me, the most iconic TikToker in the league, and that's Alana Halar Smith, which I think is just going to not only just be a delightful addition to the team's personality and locker room, but also is the reigning defensive player of the year, and somebody that's an area that look, this backcourt is going to be dynamic and fun. Or I don't know how good they're going to be defensively. We'll see. But you bring her, you bring in Jessica Shepard, you re-sign Arike at a discount, which again tells you that Arike is bought in and she wants to win. And even the small moves that they've made, the training camp contracts, bringing back Odyssey Sims, which was just announced tonight. It feels like they are building a team that can be competitive, that could absolutely be a playoff team if things break their way, and hope to God that they don't physically break like they did last year. But they're also going to be really fun to watch and are going to be a massive, massive TV draw. And those things matter, especially as you're trying to convince the city of Dallas to go ahead and get that ground broken on that beautiful new training facility.
Very, very true. Okay, well, I have to give a little bit of honorable mention to Toronto because I love what they have done. This is not an expansion team roster. Yes, there's some hilarious signings like Mabry's sister. Fine. Yes, you have to have the Toronto native on the roster. I love that. Great. Nurse. But the way they've put together a roster that is not what we saw in Golden State last year, is not what we're seeing in Portland this year. It does not. It feels more like, yeah, they're not a championship contender. They're a bubble playoff team at best, or maybe a little bit better. What I'm not trying to like box them in. What I'm trying to say is this is not a bottom of the league trying to start out at the bottom and climb their way up. We enter the season and they are already in the middle of the pack. So got to give them some love there. Losers, I have to do it. Minnesota is my free agency loser. Yeah. They lost 4 of their 7 first 7, swung. They were knowledgeable that these moves were going to happen. Like, let's be real about it. Let's give Cheryl Reeves some flowers. Everybody who was a starter got a mill from last year. Not are all those players necessarily, if you take away the last 2 seasons with Cheryl Reeve, are they making $1 million? No way, shape, or form. I'm sorry, they're just not. So you got to give some love to what Cheryl Reeve has been able to do to build a team around Nafisa. They swung big, missed on NECA and Gabby. And to me, just me personally, this is a complete rebuild because Fee's expected, Cheryl Reeve can say otherwise, but Fee's expected to be out for this season, if not the rest of the season, for this season, for most of it, or for all of it, as we've been hearing through the grapevine. That's what reports are coming out. Cheryl Reeve has denied it, or not even denied it, but jokingly sidestepped it. So Fee's not, like, the way I break things down, if you don't have an MVP caliber player, you're not in a serious championship contention. And so if you're missing Fee for the majority of this season, you're missing your MVP caliber player, then you need to ramp her back up to whatever. So even if just that Fee aspect, we're talking about, in my mind, this season is kind of a wash for Minnesota. Yes, if you would have gotten NECA and Gabby, maybe we're talking about a roster that can hold its own until that point, but we're not. And so for me, like, maybe I'm being a little harsh, jumping the gun. I love the Olivia Miles move. Yes, I would have gone with Awa, but I love the Olivia Miles move. I think they still have a good amount of talent. Rachel did a great job working with Cheryl Reeve. Shout out to Rachel, bringing in those overseas players, some Big 12 players onto this roster, into training camp. So it's exciting. It's interesting. But look, let's be real. This is a team that 2 seasons ago was 5 seconds away from a championship. Last year were the best team in the regular season by far, and then fizzled out in the playoffs. And now we're talking about they don't have their best player. They're missing 4 of 7. And this is just not the same team that we've seen before. And yeah, as sad as it makes me to say, Minnesota, my loser. What about you?
Yeah, I think you make great points on Minnesota. It's gonna be really fascinating to see what they're able to do. For me, my loser is the Connecticut Sun. What are you doing? I have no idea what the plan is there. I feel terrible for that fan base. It's an amazing fan base, and what's being done with them with relocation. As much as I'm going to be ecstatic to see the Houston Comets come back, it shouldn't be like this. And the MNBA, I am a Sacramento Kings fan, and so I know what it's like when people tell you you don't deserve your franchise that you love and pour everything into. And so I feel terrible for them, but that does not excuse them from completely being just a WTF over the last couple of weeks. So I think they had a decent draft, getting Charlize Ledger-Walker and Gianna Neepkins, who if AZ Fudd is the best shooter in the draft, Gianna is not far behind her whatsoever and just has a lightning quick release and is just a really, really exciting young player. But this does not look like a roster that's built to win now. So why did you bring in Brittany Griner? And it feels like they've invested in some players that have the ability to develop, but I don't know that there's an opportunity for them to develop to their full potential based on this roster construction. I have a lot of players that do the same thing. You have a lot of players that are built very similarly, and so I don't know what your roster is going to look like when it comes to putting 5 on the floor that can win games. So you love a Sanaya Rivers, like I mentioned, Jan Eakins and Charlie Sledger-Walker, I think are really fun players. I don't know how Diamond Miller really fits. You have Aaliyah Edwards and Anissa Morrow. There's just a lot of players that have well-rounded games, but very few, I think, that have really elite traits. And I'm wondering how this is going to work this season.
Yeah, I would also give a little bit of attention to Phoenix. Obviously, you lose Kit and Lex, but the biggest is Satu. You losing Satu,
Yeah.
like we all know. Look, you have Alyssa Thomas and Ka. You're talking about a playoff team. You're talking about the AT is going to make you a contender somehow. She has to, pinball everybody. But the fact is, losing Satu is a huge deal. Were there anything in the draft or in free agency before we close out this episode that surprised you? That you were like, oh, what? Huh,
Yeah, I
huh.
mean, there have been a couple like I just mentioned with Brittany Griner going to the Sun. You just kind of think with a player that has put in that much experience and could be so valuable in the right role on the roster. You want to see her be on a contending team and be on a team that's going to have a chance to make a run. I will say, like, the biggest surprise for me was, well, there's two, is how did New York manage to sign everybody? Like, that's shocking. And why is
Open the books.
right?
Open the books.
Open the books. But then secondly, to New York, how is Natasha, and unless something has changed in the last like hour, but how is Natasha Cloud not on a roster yet? Like to have New York build so well and to have her, I mean, she's still in New York. She's still doing TikToks with Mom Donnie that I love and are delightful. But that was a huge surprise for me. And then, like I mentioned, the fall of Tanaya Latson, I think really surprised me. And man, like there's just nothing that hurts more than seeing a kid that's there and that's waiting to hear their name called have to wait so long. But I think she handled it with utter and total grace. So yeah, I mean, those were kind of the two biggest things that right away that I'm like, I didn't expect things to go like that so quickly.
Yeah, Natasha Cloud definitely up there on the list. Chicago Sky actually being able to court players.
Yeah.
And just I'm gonna say this is no shade to Kurt or what I'm about to say, but the Dallas Wings having a competent offseason. Like an offseason, like I'm sorry, the last 8 years have been
Sure.
pretty rough for this team with a lot of turnover and a lot of change, and frankly, a lot of not people like the story with Dallas has been people wanting to leave, not people wanting to come there. And now that you bring in a player like Paige and people want to join. And so that has been really fun to say. I just want to say to close out this episode, thank you for listening and supporting independent WNBA coverage. Winsidr's been doing this for a while now, and it only works because of this community. So thank you.